It's longer and longer. Thank you. Hi everybody. Hi everybody in the faraway lands where you may be. So while we're this is an HPA program, know that really my goal is to touch everybody beyond HPA of all age groups and really to do what I can to serve. So it's all about that and really caring for our oceans and caring for our lands and everything in between and hoping that we can live as peacefully on Earth as humans can with all that we bring. So as she mentioned, I'm Laura Jim, co-director HPA Sea Turtle Research Program. I am big on photography, so I really want to get I need to now find a hot fish that's personally consuming something. So I always need a goal, because it can get kind of old. So there's my next goal. So the courses I teach right now, so we have our capstone Marine Science and Advocacy program, and basically all seniors at HPA have to do a capstone or get to have the opportunity to do a capstone program. So I do a lot of independent research through that. I teach Hawai'i coral reef ecology and then also both inverts and vertebrates. So really place-based marine biology here at HPA. And then of course I teach mostly open water and advanced scuba to HPA students as well as students that come in to HPA over the summer. And then I also have independent marine bio courses where kids can choose specific research, generally in the turtles. So as you mentioned, so grew up here as a child of Hawai'i, born in Waimea, actually Kohala at the time. But I think much of my formative time was really at the Mara, which was in Pohnpei in the Federated States of Micronesia. So there I was able to do sponge farming, soft and hard coral research, and other things related to their trade school with their students. So super fun time, spent about 2 to 3 years there. And then come back. So just a reminder, if you don't know the Big Island, so we're up in the mountains, but I'm rarely in the mountains. So many of my colleagues are like, oh, where are you going today? And I'm off and about and, just a 10-minute drive down to the shore. So for our Marine Studies program, we really strive to work towards the conservation of marine life and really including sea turtles in that. So sea turtles is our signature program, but working worldwide through really education, stewardship, research, advocacy, and then working with students and community members. So within the program, we have our sea turtle research program that I'll talk about a lot more. As I mentioned, we have marine bio courses, we have our Scuba Program, and then our community stewardship, and doing what we can across the island. So Sea Turtle Research Program began in 1987. So back then, our first trip was to Kiholo. In 1988, I was a participant as a high school student. And our first trip was to Kiholo. Most of our trips initially were to Kiholo. I think it was, I can't remember the stats, but it was like 3 days. We would do it overnight because you would never see turtles during the daytime. And would run the net overnight across the bay and just monitor the net all night. And I think it was like 5 turtles over the course of 3 days. Now, certainly quite different. So the legislation came about in the early 70s, certainly had a positive impact on turtle populations. So these are the olden days, and we've kept it going for the last 30, every year, I was okay, wait, what was it, 30-something years. And it began really, David Golko, who's with DAR, was one of the starts, with George Balaz, and then Mark Rice, my colleague, was with it right from its infancy as well. And then I came along, I did it as a student, and then also I rejoined HPA in 2000 and hopped right into the role of assisting the Sea Turtle Research Program. On Hawai'i Island, we have some regular study sites that we use. And these are for regular monitoring health assessments. So about once a year at each of these sites, we'll go in and we'll collect data on turtles. We'll safely capture, measure, weigh, tag, moto tool them, and release them back. And that just becomes a larger batch of a data set. Students are really integrated and involved into the whole process. And they really develop tremendous field-based skills that they don't know how special it is. They're very lucky. And we have some students who begin at middle school with us and then continue on for upwards of 7-8 years. And many of the students who are with us, almost on every trip, really write back and say, here's what I'm doing, thank you so much for everything. And of course, the sea turtles is why we do this. And we work in conjunction with NOAA, so we are supported and promoted, allowed to do this work through permits provided to us through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration with Marine Turtle Biology and Assessment Program. And what do we do on a tagging trip? So you'll see here that we are safely collecting the turtles. Sometimes we're on snorkel, sometimes we're net capturing, sometimes hand capturing. And we do everything from weighing, tagging, and doing other mini projects throughout the decade or so. There have been independent projects that have come about through work that we've done, toxicology, stomach sampling, different things that kind of migrate in and out with specific researchers. And then of course the releasing, which is the favorite part. So here are the types of measurements we take. So you think carapace on the top, plastron on the bottom. We always use straight length, straight width. We do curved carapace length, curved carapace width. We look at the plastron, the underside. Just a lot of people don't see the data sheets and know what exactly we're recording, so I thought it might be interesting. And then we do look at the tail length, and we go from plastron all the way to tail end, and then also to the cloaca themselves. And then, of course, the mass. Every turtle that we encounter, we now put 4 tags on, 2 of which are pit tags, and those are embedded in the hind flippers. And you cannot physically see that. And then we're also now putting on, gone back to adding in metal tags. So that's what you'll see as a diver. You'll see the hind metal tags in the back. Yep. In addition, you will start to see, I don't know if any of you have seen, but I know at Koloko Honokahau, you'll see the moto tool numbers. So turtles that go through strandings or are part of a research program or are nesting on Papahanaumokuakea will get a moto tool number on them. And that is part of a citizen science project, and I'll talk more about that. So, the question is why? Like, why do we do this research? And a lot of it, like the monitoring, where you're looking at, okay, Dar was mentioning since 1990, right? We've had this data. You don't always know what this data is going to be used for, right? You're kind of just going through the process saying we're standardizing it, we're collecting it. It may become information that we want to know in the future. Also, it might be, oh, we want to look at this one other aspect of it. And so just an example of 2 years ago, I put together a presentation looking at growth rates. This is just one very basic thing that you can do with some of this data set. And this all is open source, right? It's collected through government. So I just kind of took a look at from 1980 to 2018, and not all sites began in 1980, but some did, where I looked at growth rates. And it's just kind of interesting to show. It's hard to see up here, but you can see I just included Puoko, Kiholo, Manalani, and Koloko Honokahau. And you can just see growth rates. So mean growth rate at Koloko Honokahau of the 148 individuals I looked at. Now that would require that they're collected more than once, right, to get growth rates. So that was only 0.9 centimeters per year. Right? And that's straight carapace length. So that's not a lot of growth, right? Yeah, and so imagine you need to reach, 90 centimeters, 85 centimeters. That's going to take a while. Now they do have fast growth initially. At Manalani, which is only 53 individuals, we had 1.1 centimeter per year. Kiholo 1.3, and then Puoko 0.9. So I'm just showing you ways that you can actually look at data that we collect. And this is just all the locations that I looked at. Beloved Kapoho'ope was a wonderful place for turtles. Hono-count is what I mentioned, where we put etchings on the turtles, and you can imagine there's carapace is really thick fingernail material, and just imagine you're indenting it a tiny bit, and then we can apply a non-toxic paint to it, and this will last anywhere from 3 to 9, maybe a year, depending on the organism, depending on the environment, its growth rate, coupled with fouling and things. So this can be used by citizens to report where organisms are found. And it's really interesting, and I'll show you a couple of examples when people do report this. Sometimes it's a post-stranding, and maybe we've done some effort to it to see how it's recovered. And additionally, we can, if it's part of our research, we've done a research day, we can start to see if it's migrating to different locations, when it's basking, when it's not. This is also used for the nesting turtles. So turtles that nest up at Papahanaumokuakea, they may not know the origin of where its foraging grounds are. And so it's neat to report. I don't know if anybody's ever seen any East Island turtles. There was one that went past Puoko, which was super interesting. Yeah. And as researcher, I can see all, I'm shared all the reports. So these are just images that I just took off of our shared folder that I can then go in and track where specific turtles were observed. In addition to doing what we call, hands-on research of actually collecting and tagging, know that there's different projects that students with my support have done. Know that every turtle has a unique facial pattern. Okay, so you can actually identify the turtles based on their facial work. So this is a project that a student a couple years ago looked at the Hilton Lagoon. So that area has a very interesting habitat in that from their waterways, they have this color but algae coming down. And it seems, sometimes I've seen 20 to 25 turtles in their little man-made area, lagoon. And so what she attempted to do was identify how many turtles are actually using the area. So stuff like that can be done. Know that you don't need a research permit to take a photo, right? As long as you're doing it respectfully. Similarly, here's another project we did at Puoko with a student, Alden Meza, where we did regular night and day surveys along the whole Puoko coastline. And so she was able to identify, generally when we added in nighttime, we would do 3 segments and 3 consecutive nights. And it would be upwards of 90 to 100 turtles that we'd count on those, similarly in the daytime.
In one night?
So it was like 3 nights, just because it takes. Yeah, so there's a lot of turtles there. And that's just what we saw. So she then created heat maps and used ArcGIS a little bit to identify areas. And then she hyper-focused on a couple basking areas where we were to get facial shots to see how many were basking in specific areas. So those are just some of the examples of independent research that we've done. Now the Stranding program is near and dear to my heart, and that is largely because of the current stressors of a fishing line that we're encountering with sea turtles. And I think anybody who has empathy for wildlife or empathy for others knows that fishing line is not our friend. Right? So Mark Rice and myself help run from maybe Koloko with Dar's help, all the way up to Kohala side. And then we have Dar that's running all of Kona, South Kona, and pretty soon Dar Hilo will be taking over the Hilo side. So we have an amazing network of Stranding cohort that really works together to assist, aid, respond to callers. And this is just, I just put a few examples. This is from a hawksbill that was off Kona that we helped with. This was during COVID time. This is one off Puoko that was on a turtle. This is one that we were able to collect off Puoko, and it just shows social media posts that then alerted me to kind of go take a look at it, and you can see what fishing line does to sea turtles. This is a recent one off Puoko as well. So our stranding program, we will respond to any type of stranding event with turtles that's needed. Oftentimes, it's just a phone call explaining what basking is. But that in and of itself is beautiful, because then we can educate people about how to be respectful to the turtles, and then also what's happening to our wildlife. So there is a main reporting number that's perfect, that does get to then the specific people, whether it be a monk seal or a sea turtle or some other, or a dolphin or a whale. At the same time, we also have our numbers that people that are along the coastline that are used to us can call us directly. What happens with turtles actually is nowadays, if there's a turtle that needs support or rehabilitation, we'll get shipped over to the Maui Ocean Center, and then they'll do rehabilitation and typically send them back here to their home base. Used to be NOAA's facility on Ford Island, but it's since changed a little bit. So this is an example of kind of the continuation of multiple things. So this is a turtle with fishing line. We did send it, we don't typically always send to Makni, but it did go to Maui Ocean Center, came back, moto tooled it, released it back at A-Bay, and then over the course of, these are just July 5th through 7th of reportings of this turtle that's a regular basker. So we can see, and I have more since 2024 as well, I just did not include it here, of this turtle, and we can use that Honan count to identify where the turtle's seen. And it's kind of a cool connection to see what's happening with our stranding cases and whether what we're doing for the stranding case is resulting in a positive outcome for the turtle. Sorry, my computer's a little slow. And then here are just a couple interesting case studies, again, where stranding and then research coalesce. So this was a turtle that was, she was called Barnacle Betty, and she was an adult at Koloko Honokahau that Sally would see quite often. This turtle was actually, she's a female, and was actually a Manawatu release. So from the Sea Life Park, was one of the Sea Life Park hatchlings, was released back in 90, I don't know if that's 92, it's hard to read on there. And then we encountered her at Koloko, and then for the majority of her life at Koloko Honokahau. She was, unfortunately, did die from, we think, a spear to the head at Kohanaiki. We did try to rehabilitate, but it wasn't successful. But very interesting turtle, and you can see how by conducting research throughout, the last 20, 30 years, we can then find the story of these turtles. And their growth rate when they hit maturity, she was 30.5, 30.6 years old at the time. And I think we have one more that's kind of an interesting case study that I looked at. And this was one at Kiholo. And so this was a turtle that we first collected in 1988. Yep. And I don't think we know if it's a male or female, but we were able to look at, these are the frequency with which we collected this turtle at Kiholo. It's not to adult age yet. It was actually a floater. Did send it to Makani, came back, and we haven't been to Kiholo since. But just kind of interesting how research and then connected with the Stranding can tell us a lot of information about these turtles. And our Stranding program is really only possible because of all of our collaborators. Division of Aquatic Resources is huge, Maui Ocean Center, NOAA Fisheries. Everybody who observes a turtle is always super helpful. Kohala Center with the Reef Teach program, and Kekai Ola now is playing a big role too in supporting of the strandings of sea turtles. Other things that HPA does is we've done quite a bit of international research over the last 30 years. Currently 2 of our efforts, one of which is at Vanuatu. And so we've done 5 different trips there with collaborators in Vanuatu, looking at where the turtles that are nesting there forage. So here's a little video. We 2018, 19, 20, and then did a hiatus. So we were in Moso Island. Vanuatu is just right up here. And in 2018, we collected 3 nesting turtles. 2 went to, the next year we collected 1 that went to New Caledonia, 2020. 1 that stayed in Vanuatu, 1 New Caledonia, 1 that went off to Great Barrier Reef. 2018, we had 1 that made it all the way to the Great Barrier Reef. And then this last year we collected 3, 2 which went to the Great Barrier Reef, and then 1 went to New Caledonia. So really interesting area, very small island. Never knew where their turtles were going. So it was super fascinating. And to know that they have such a big connection. This is really great distance that they travel. Yeah, it's in the 1,000 miles. Yeah.
I guess the current would help them a lot.
Because it was tracking, it's a similar line.
It's a weird, yeah, but it's a weird, the coral sea's kind of interesting. Yeah, yep. Yeah, there was one year, our last year, where it was very, it was very stormy, and the turtle actually hopscotched, stayed here for a while, and then was cruising around, and then hopscotched to another island. Yeah, super interesting. Another one that we're a part of is this really interesting project coming out of Stanford. So prior to current times, Mark Rice, George Balaz, and the Port of Nagoya Aquarium set out 231 juvenile loggerhead turtles over the span of maybe 6-7 years, and tracked where they went. And they would get dropped off pretty close to Japan, but kind of over east a little bit. And what they noticed is there was a small selection of them that made it over to Baja California. And so that was taken on by some folks and said, why do they sometimes get over to Baja California, but not all the time, right? And not in high numbers. And so they created this thermal corridor hypothesis. And that's with Dana Briscoe and Larry here, taking a look at, okay, let's try and do this in 4-year time span where we release 25 turtles further into the Central Pacific, and let's see where they go, right? So this was last summer was the first release, And this is a really fun website to go onto and kind of watch. The tags are slowly dying, so we're kind of done with now the tagging. But if you did make it over to Baja, and it is El Nino year, so kind of you would anticipate that happening. So super interesting project. There's 3 more years going on, and this summer will be the next cohort. And so we just, Mark Rice really helps a lot with the logistics, and then I'm able to take students to help support this and place the tags on them. Yeah, and you know, all the North Pacific loggerheads all nest in Japan. So there's no other nesting habitat, so they all originate in Japan, which is kind of cool. And then of course, HPA, I feel, and myself feels very strongly about coastal cleanups and getting some debris off our shorelines. So students really engage with this. Usually we run booths, information booths, and then also assist with various cleanups. And one thing that we were really noticing, as everybody does, quite a bit of fishing line. And so myself, Alakaha Kai, as well as Kipoko Beautiful got together, and we have placed a bunch of bins. Hopefully people have been seeing them. Fishing line recycling bins. And so currently we have Kapa'a Beach Park, one actually at Mahukona, because one was underperforming. Kauai Harbor North, we have 2 at the Gulch in this area, 1 at Surf Park, 1 at Kauai Harbor South, 2 in Spencer's, 1 at Pu'ukobo Ramp, and we recently added Koloko and Keauhou Bay. Yeah. All the line here does get shipped off for recycling, but basically the fishing line, we collect it. Our collaborators, I have collaborators, Wendy Noritaki up here that helps collect up here, and then we have our National Park Service collaborators that help collect, and then we also have Roseanne helping to collect here. Collect all of this, another individual will collect that, and that all comes to HPA. And then we do all the measuring, weighing, and assessing. And students work on this project. So far, and this is, I'm somewhat behind in my measurements, so I think we're closer to 11 miles, has been collected. It's only been up for about 2 years. So it's definitely serving a purpose. Some areas I'm still seeing fishing line right below the fishing line bin, but it's getting better, I think, and the educational part is there of understanding where we dispose of our things. This is a famous Honolulu fishing area, so lots of gear comes in through that. And some of this also is divers and snorkelers collecting stuff and placing them in the bins, because you can see how foul they are. Yeah, and there's a website that we created where you can track each location and where how much has been collected from there. And you can go onto this website. One of my students created it, and we just constantly update it.
How old was the student that created that?
Well, it's kind of, you know, one individual created this on Canva, didn't work out. So then another student worked with me on it. So yeah, a senior, junior, senior.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you work with the DAR one as well? Do you work with Megan on the one that's at our office?
I have not at all. Yeah, I'm not sure where. Do people come hand stuff in?
Yeah, we have a similar device like that, but we should chat about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Over-
collaborating.
yeah.
Totally. And I think that's it. I just really wanted to celebrate. First of all, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for
you for
coming.
everybody. You know, it's